He's among the world's foremost columnists whose views on COVID-19 and the US reaction and the road ahead are fundamental as billions around the world face the biggest healthcare crisis perhaps ever. We are very privileged to be joined by the New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman. Thank you, Mr. Friedman, very much for being with us. I've been reading a lot of your editorials of late, but I must ask you about a certain photograph which came up on Twitter yesterday or day before from one of the states, and you should be able to see that soon, which has got people in a swimming pool with zero social or physical distancing. Let's have that image up, and just having an absolute blast. How on earth do people, and we've got that up there, behave that everything is okay at a time when the US death toll was nearly 100,000?
Well, I asked myself the same question. You know, we're seeing a lot of really reckless behavior. I totally understand why after 2.5 months of lockdown, people want to get out. But I've been urging everyone to do it responsibly, socially distance, wear a mask, protect the elderly and the most vulnerable, be smart about it. But you know, one of the problems we're having in my country now, it's a real absence of national leadership. Our president won't even be seen wearing a mask. And a lot of our citizens are kind of caught between two poles. Between breaking news. Breaking news is always telling them, you know, something, 24 kids here got inflammation, or one 24-year-old died here. And you have no idea, is that 24 out of 24, 24 out of 2,400, 24 out of 24,000, 24 out of 24 million. So breaking news on the one hand is making you like really frightened. And then we have a president, you know, who's suggesting maybe you should drink Lysol or some other detergent or have an ultraviolet colonoscopy. And so, you know, people are really confused. And in that absence of leadership, they look to mayors, they look to governors. Some of them are really encouraging people to go out, get the economy going, others to be careful. So frankly, the sum total of America's response right now to COVID-19 is we're a complete mess.
Yeah. Mr. Friedman, you know, it's science versus belief versus the antithesis to science in many senses. If you look at what Donald Trump has been saying, one quote, "I feel about vaccines like I feel about tests. This is going to go away without a vaccine. It's going to go away and we're not going to see it again, hopefully after a period of time." This is dangerous, isn't it? I mean, just to say that all that, or to suggest that all that effort going into creating a vaccine isn't really necessary, when in fact it's a vaccine, which is perhaps the magic bullet we're all looking for.
Well, you know, there's only two ways to overcome a pathogen like this. There's only one way, really, and that's with herd immunity, that enough of us develop the immune antibodies. There's only two ways to do that. One is with a vaccine, and the one is through natural exposure, which we assume, although we haven't fully confirmed, will give you immunity, at least for a period of time. And I'm praying for a vaccine. You know, I kind of see this as a race between Moore's law and COVID's law. You know, COVID's law is about how one person can, you know, affect 3 and then 3 each affect 10. And then suddenly you've got 59,000 people affected. And Moore's law is the speed and power of microchips. It's a proxy for technological innovation. And I am hopeful about a vaccine. But to suggest that we shouldn't be interested in a vaccine that it's going to go away miraculously, that's magical thinking. And that's unfortunately Trump thinking right now.
Yeah. You know, over here in India, several weeks back, we all headlined Donald Trump saying that if India doesn't provide us with hydroxychloroquine, then there would be consequences. So India and Prime Minister Modi, being a very close friend of the US president, agreed, and India sent in hydroxychloroquine. But now there are reports which suggest that having hydroxychloroquine could in fact increase fatality if it's not used in a very, very controlled scenario. I mean, that's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, our own Food and Drug Administration, which the president technically oversees, has told people, you know, not to be taking this drug, that it has potentially dangerous side effects related to heart arrhythmia and whatnot. So I just can't emphasize to you how leaderless we are right now. Americans are home alone in the biggest pandemic in a century.
Yeah. What's it going to look like for us next year, assuming we have a vaccine, assuming that billions around the world are getting it and slowly we start getting better? What's the world going to look like for us?
Well, I think, and I pray there's a vaccine. I pray everyone in the world gets it, particularly the most vulnerable, for starters. I think that the biggest, the economy will surely come back. There'll be a restoration of air travel. But I think one of the big changes that people are discovering, there's a lot of jobs that went away that aren't going to come back.
Yeah.
We closed the New York Times bureau basically in Washington, where I am, in early March. We're not scheduled to open until September. Our main office has told people we're not coming back to work as early as September. We have, in the meantime, as the New York Times, with everybody, basically, virtually everybody working at home, we've added something like, 1 million online subscribers, and we've put out an amazing newspaper every day. So we've discovered, basically, that we don't need to be going into the office. And I think this is happening to big companies all over the world. What does that mean for office spaces? What does it mean for automation? And more automation, replacing jobs. So I think there's going to be a giant sorting out. We're not just going to go back to the old system we had before. And a lot of jobs, I think, will be shrunk and lost in this process as more and more people work at home. Then the services that used to cater to them downtown, literally restaurants that cater to them, parking lots, real estate, that will change. So this pandemic will have some lasting effects.
Yeah. What about the equation with China? Here in India, we are facing an incredible standoff in the Ladakh region of North India with the Chinese army. And yet there is also this huge battle between America and China. It's being spoken of in various press conferences, harsh words on either side. Many of us see this as some sort of a battle for world supremacy. Once COVID goes away, or even in the next few months, how is this going to play out?
Well, pandemics accelerate, existing cleavages. And one of the existing cleavages this pandemic has accelerated is between U.S. and China. We were already going divergent routes. We were going divergent routes, I would argue, because China had overplayed its hand. Overplayed its hand in the South China Sea, overplayed its hand on, exports and imports to China, overplayed its hands on Belt and Road, overplayed its hands on government-funded expansion of its technology base. And so there were a lot of tensions there already, and they're being widened by this. But China overplayed its hand while America basically underperformed. My view was that, and remains, Donald Trump is not the American president that America deserves. But he is the American president that China deserves. That there needed to be someone who called the game, with China. They had gone over the edge. But at the same time, Trump has done it. And India should be concerned about this in a really foolish way. What was the right way to deal with China on trade? The right way would have been for America to sign the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership Agreement, bring 40% of global GDP under a trade regime, American design, American rules, most modern for the 21st century information economy, then gone to places like India and Europe and say, you guys also have trade issues with China, you come with us. You get 80% of global GDP on your side, and then you negotiate with China, and you make it a negotiation between the world against China on what are the right trade rules of the game. Now, when you do that, you leverage all the Chinese reformers on your side. Instead, Trump made it totally bilateral. He made it a fight between him and Xi Jinping over who has the biggest tariff. And in doing so, he leveraged all the Chinese nationalists on Xi Jinping's side. Now he's doing the exact same thing with COVID-19. He's making this an America-China fight rather than making it a global fight, getting the world together under the WHO, maybe asking Singapore to chair it and say, this is the world versus China on where this virus came from. When you do that, you leverage all the Chinese who want to know where this virus came from. When you do it America versus Xi, you leverage all the Chinese nationalists on his side. And it's just stupid. And it's why Trump is a chump. If you ask me, who are China and Russia? Who are China and Russia both going to vote for in 2020? They will get a vote in their own way in America's election. They're both going to vote actually for Trump. Why? Because they both know as long as Donald Trump is president of the United States, America will be in turmoil. We will never realize our full potential. And they both know as long as Trump is president of the United States, he can never organize a global coalition against them. They're not stupid. They figured this out. Trump is a chump.
All right. Well, Thomas Friedman, it's a pleasure speaking to you, getting your views on this incredible crisis. I heard you speaking to another journalist some time back on the world being flat. We are entirely flat now. We are all part of the same problem, billions around the world. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us, sharing your views.
My pleasure. Greetings to my friends in India. Everyone stay safe.